Growing up as a young Asian boy in the United States during the early 2000s, film and television was a daily part of my growing life, with the images and lessons displayed in these media playing a crucial role in my development into a young man. The thrill, anxiousness, and triumph felt when watching Spider-Man swing across New York after defeating the Green Goblin, or Luke Skywalker fight against a villainous Darth Vader, astonished my young mind. Despite my obsession, I've always felt a disconnect with the heroes I've grown to love. On the playgrounds or when playing video games, I've constantly been reminded by my peers that I can't be my favorite character because of my race, and instead been reduced to playing the stereotypical Asian sidekick, henchman, or supervillain. This infuriated me, as the images that reflected who I wanted to be as a man were never present in any of the media I love to consume. Nowadays, in the age of information, proper representation in the film industry is something heavily advocated for by many film and movie lovers, with Asian men finally getting the opportunity to truthfully depict their unique experiences, struggles, and triumphs without the burden of stereotypes. Well, it has been a long time coming. How did we even get to this point? In this essay, I will be giving background to the socio-political events that affected the type of roles given to Asian actors in Western media and history and the effect it had on the psyche of Asian masculinity. In the early 1900s, many Asians migrated from their respective homelands to the United States in search of economic prosperity in hopes of making the standard of living higher for their families back home. With this influx of thousands in search of jobs came cultural and economic tension with white Americans, who felt threatened by the presence of these foreigners. As a result, Asians were depicted in a negative light in the silent films of early Hollywood, often depicted as villainous, conniving, and culturally alien. Despite these negative tropes that heavily affected the way Asians were treated in American society, some actors found great success and stardom due to these roles. Japanese-born actor Sessue Hayakawa became a sex symbol among white women due to his roles in films as a sensual and attractive antagonistic lover. Although his popularity came at the cost of being fetishized by white women due to his Oriental background, he eventually became the first Asian studio owner in the United States, creating his own film productions indiscriminate of race and creed. Unfortunately for Hayakawa and other Asian actors in the 20s and 30s, rising anti-Japanese sentiment forced them into less prominent and degrading roles as servants, coolies, and laundrymen, who served the white protagonists in their journey. When Asians are at the forefront of film, however, they are played by white actors with yellow face and are written to be inferior in comparison to their white counterparts. Most notably, the character Charlie Chan. This character was written to be passive, quiet, smart, and speaking in broken English, which was taken as a joke by many white viewers. This trope of yellow face, demasculinization, and villainization was continued in the next coming decades due to the Second World War, to keep the public perception of Asian masculinity low among white Americans to quell the idea of a foreign threat. In turn, discrimination and hate turned rampant in American towns and cities, with Asian men being picked on and treated as other and undesirable. In the mid-60s and 70s, many strides were made in civil rights and immigration into the United States. Thus, the Immigration Act of 1965 was put into place, allowing for the influx of hundreds of thousands of Asian immigrants. With the rising Asian population and expansion of Chinatowns across the United States, came the flooding of Asian film into the market. This brought about the popularization of Chinese martial arts films, led by one of the most influential Asian actors of all time, Bruce Lee. Born in San Francisco, but raised in China in the 40s, Lee began his acting career in the late 60s as a sidekick to the popular white TV superhero, the Green Hornet. Only receiving one-dimensional supporting roles, Lee returned to China and began starring in Chinese-produced martial arts films as a leading man. These films proved to be a huge box office success, which was noticed by Hollywood executives. As a result, he was brought back to the States to produce, direct, and star in his own films. This new image of a strong and able-bodied Asian man made waves in the community, with many men feeling empowered, a side of representation that did not make a mockery of their race. But with the popularity came exploitation that oversaturated the market with Asian-led martial arts films. The martial artist gimmick became prominent and was flipped from an empowering image to derogatory and racist stereotype used against Asian men across America. Unfortunately, in the coming decades, this stereotype was heavily enforced into pop culture media, with men now being typecast into these roles. Frustrated at the lack of accurate representation, many independent Asian American filmmakers such as Justin Lee and Wayne Wang created successful films that rang true to the Asian American experience in the United States. Despite these efforts, the mainstream perception of what an Asian man is plagued their image in the years to come. With the shift into the information era, awareness has been spread among the newer generations about political correctness, representation, and social acceptance. These ideas invoked rallying for proper representation and storytelling involving people of all races, genders, and creeds, with the intolerance of any media that marginalizes or disrespects any one person's experiences, lifestyles, and cultures. As a result, many films have been made that finally paint Asian men and masculinity in a light that the community has been craving for over a century. Films such as Crazy Rich Asians, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and Minari portray Asian men as heroic, romantic, sensual, empathetic, and hardworking individuals, straying away from the stereotypes of the past, embracing their cultural history, and rejuvenating the masculinity of the Asian male. Despite some depictions still being grounded in the martial arts or model minority stereotype, the movie industry moving forward seems to be heading in the direction of exploring the fluidity of masculinity without the comparison to conservative white ideas, making the idea of what it is to be an Asian male more inclusive for all across the world. In conclusion, our present in which Asian actors can obtain roles indiscriminately of their background and barren of stereotypes has been a long time coming. With the abundance of Asian faces on the big screen, playing characters that the future generations can relate and connect to, American society can then reach a point where there's a general understanding about masculinity without the need to demean any one person because of their race and sexuality. In turn, this allows boys and men around the world to feel comfortable in their own masculinity without any doubt.